Unspoken Issues.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Unspoken Issues podcast. We are back. It's me, Jesse Starcher, and with me tonight, Chris Armstrong. We're talking Darkman. That's right. We had a poll out there, Chris. We threw it out there to everybody. And do you remember how this came about? We were sitting around trying to figure out what the next poll would be.
I think initially you were looking at maybe, was it movies that had gotten a comic book series?
Yeah, I think we were kind of landing there. And at first I was like, let's do like 80s action films, because I think I was going like with Alien maybe in the 90s, and Terminator maybe grab it, and then we'd throw that up as a poll. And then it kind of morphed into something else where I think you threw over a list that was like the best adaptations. Right. Yeah. That's where I was like, yeah, I want to go with that. I like a comic book adaptation of a movie because it's fun to see how it varies from the movie, which you and I did Army of Darkness, and that was a lot of fun. So
another Raimi.
Yeah, another Raimi film that we discussed an adaptation for. So we threw the poll up. We did it on Twitter, and then finally I got around to putting it on Facebook. It's so funny because I when I threw it onto Twitter, I had one choice that I really, really wanted to do, and that was arachnophobia.
I was the same. I was hoping that would win because I don't think I knew Arachnophobia had a comic book. I remember the ads for the movie in a lot of comics around the time I got into comics, which I guess was the same year as this, 1990, right?
Yeah. So the choices were, we had Total Recall, Species, Arachnophobia, and Darkman. Now, the reason why I threw Arachnophobia on there is because I bought the adaptation of that off of the shelf after watching the movie, I believe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I actually own that adaptation's in a poly bag that's been beat to crap, even in the poly bag.
Is it just one issue, or is it?
Yeah. It's just a one shot.
It seemed like, I know Rocketeer had maybe like a 50-page comics adaptation that I had when I was younger. Marvel usually did the miniseries. They did like an Indiana Jones Last Crusade miniseries, and then this Darkman one. But some of them, I think, just did a one-shot deal with an oversized. Right.
This was published by Hollywood Comics. So published by Walt Disney Publications. So, okay.
Well, Hollywood Pictures was, I think, one of the studios that Disney had back then. Maybe that's what produced the movie. Maybe they had their own comic line too. I don't know.
Well, anyway, so that was why Arachnophobia unfortunately did not win. Love the movie. Haven't read the adaptation in forever, so I'm really, really curious as to how the differences were, but we're not going to find out on this episode.
Maybe in the future.
So anyway, over on Twitter, here's the results on Twitter. We had 7 votes, and it didn't get around to as much as the Facebook one did, and I think a lot of that has to do with our Unspoken Decade friends hopping in on that. But anyway, 7 votes over there. Total Recall and Species tied for 14.3% of the votes. Arachnophobia with 28.6%, I think, which is me and you. And then Darkman wins at 42.9% there. And then over on Facebook, we had 47 votes on that poll. We ran this on our Unspoken Issues podcast Facebook page, but we shared it all over the place when we could. The Unspoken Decade has been gaining some traction, and when it hit over there, we started getting a lot of people interested in voting on this thing. So results are Species 9% over there, Total Recall 14%, Arachnophobia 18%, and then yes, Darkman running away with it 59%. So yeah, this was 1990. I want to say that this is 3 issues, came out from Marvel.
I do know that Darkman is an original idea that Sam Raimi came up with to make the movie out of. It's an original idea. It wasn't based on older comics.
I have a little trailer reaction here to Darkman. And by the way, I have not had a chance to watch this since it probably came out on VHS. Okay. And I rented it in 91, probably.
Nice.
So, yeah. All right, so here we go.
Who?
No foolish
That's a trailer voice if I ever heard it.
Darkman.
They really got the score. Even the score right. I gotta say, I do miss
They destroyed everything.
the old school explosions.
all that
Yeah,
he loved.
I agree.
Everything that he was. Now, crime has a new enemy.
It's right there on the cover.
Justice has a brand new face.
One thing you can see from the trailer even is the way Raimi, Sam Raimi's movies, the way he really
Power to look
stylizes
like any man.
a lot of the stuff. Like
But he is
the shadows and
any
the
man.
light coming through.
about me. He's a cockroach.
Right.
You think you kill him? And he pops up someplace else.
In the darkest hour,
Oh my God.
Julie, who's the real monster here?
there's a light that shines on every human being. But one. From director Sam Raimi. Darkman.
It's got to get you pumped to watch it.
It does, man. Sam Raimi, as far as Sam Raimi goes here at this point in his career.
This is his first studio movie. He had done the first two Evil Dead movies. He did a movie called Crime Wave that he had a bad experience working on. I don't think that was a studio movie, but it was a movie that he didn't have as much control over as he wanted and wasn't happy with that turn. It's also not very good. I watched it a couple of years ago for the first time. I think it's on Tubi maybe. And it's got a lot of the staples of his style and stuff. And there's cool stuff in it. But yeah,
Not the greatest.
Yeah. But yeah, I think Darkman was his first big budget movie. And I don't know how much we want to talk about the actual movie, but I did watch it this weekend. I'd seen it a couple times. Raimi's one of my favorite filmmakers, probably top 3 or 4 anyway. And I think the first time, I remember when I was younger, my older brother and his friend had told me, this is back in the 90s, like a year or two after the movie came out. And I'd never really watched it when I was younger, but they told me how they were all excited about the movie. The trailer got them really pumped. Mm-hmm. So I guess they would have been in their late teens at this time. And they went to see it opening weekend, and they thought it was awful.
Oh, no.
They spent the whole movie laughing. They couldn't contain themselves. And they were saying, like, I know everybody else was mad in the theater because we were just laughing through the whole thing. And looking at it now, I can kind of see that reaction because of how outrageous a lot of that stuff
It's over the top.
is. Yeah, super over the top.
Right.
Theatrical, a lot of cheesy stuff. But that is what Sam Raimi was going for. That's just, I think a lot of people were expecting Batman because it was a year after Batman. It was a new superhero thing. And the movie did not do very well. And then Raimi went back. I think his next movie was back to the Evil Dead well with Army of Darkness.
Army of Darkness. And you get that kind of, I don't know, this is a fairly serious movie if I remember correctly. And there isn't a whole lot of humor in this one, correct?
Well, the humor that is there is all from sort of people leaning into caricatures of like the cheesy, over-the-top villain and stuff like that. And some of the camera stuff is really ambitious. It doesn't always look as great as maybe it would now because just the technology to pull off some of the stuff back then wasn't quite as...
It wasn't there yet.
Strong. Yeah.
Yeah.
I still like the movie. It's not one of my favorite Sam Raimi movies. It's probably in the lower, either in the middle or in the lower end, but I still think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I remember watching it. It's been forever, but there are some iconic scenes that have transcended the movie.
The pink elephant, please.
I'm sorry, buddy. It don't count unless you're behind the line.
Well, I was behind the line.
Not hard.
I was standing right here with my girlfriend. Now, the pink elephant, if you please.
No way.
It doesn't matter, Peyton.
It matters. I won a pink elephant for my girlfriend.
Why don't you just, get lost, pal?
Elephant. Quickly.
Didn't you hear me? Weirdo.
No! Take it! Take the fucking elephant! Please, no. Forgive me.
Peyton! Wait!
Half man and a freak! He's a freak, ladies and gentlemen! He's a freak! A freak!
Seriously, dude, it is that transcends this movie. So we get this comic, which this movie was released in 90. This is late 1990, I think, when this hits the shelves.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just break down the
It's got
creative.
October is on the cover, so probably a few months before that.
Yeah.
The release date for the movie was August 24th.
Oh, wow. So that'd be really timely then.
Yeah, they probably put it out right around the time the movie was released.
Which is pretty smart.
Yes.
Okay. So our script is, you're going to recognize that name, Ralph Macchio.
Mm-hmm.
He
The
definitely.
Karate Kid.
Not the Karate Kid. But so I know I've seen his name in a ton of 90s comics.
I'm pretty sure he was editor-in-chief at some point.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I was going with. I think he was editor-in-chief. Bob Hall with pencils and breakdowns. This first issue has some Mark Teixeira inks.
Yeah, and his inks are distinctive enough that it looks just like his pencils from the Ghost Rider era, which came around the same time as this. I have a feeling, I didn't look up the Ghost Rider release dates and stuff, but I'll bet the reason he didn't do the second and third issues is because he was doing Ghost Rider at that.
Ghost Rider.
Yeah, Javier Saltares, I think, was the penciler on Ghost Rider, and then I think after a few issues, Teixeira took over as maybe the inker on that, and then he eventually was just the sole artist on that book after a few more issues.
And when you go from issue 1 to issue 2, it's night and day.
Oh, yeah, huge difference. And it suffers. Teixeira's inks make the breakdowns or whatever better in the first issue, but the other issues the art's not bad, but they're not horrible. Dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah. So lettered, I think all 3 issues here are lettered by Janice Chang. And then colors, let's make sure that this stays the same. Evelyn Stein. Yep, Evelyn Stein on colors for all 3 of these issues as well.
Apparently, Raimi initially wanted to do The Shadow, wanted to do a movie adaptation of The Shadow, and met with Universal, and they didn't really like his take, couldn't really get that worked out. So he was like, well, I'll just make my own thing. And so he came up, I think he maybe already had the idea about a guy who could change faces and stuff, and he developed that into this superhero thing. And he also, when he made the movie, wanted to kind of make it as an homage to the old Universal horror movies of like the 30s and 40s.
Okay, you can feel that, yeah.
And that's where a lot of the style, he's got the mummy type wraps on his face. He's got some kind of the opera vibes with him lurking in the shadows of the lab that he ends up in and stuff. So yeah, a lot of those influences are what kind of shaped the way he made the movie. That's pretty much it, really, I guess. I was kind of wondering, with adaptations, I know I listened to a podcast called I Read Movies, where a guy reads...
Oh, this is the guy that reads the books about the movies. Yeah, you've talked about him before.
Yeah, he reads novelizations and then tells you the differences from the movies and stuff. It's a cool podcast. I listen to it almost, unless it's a movie I don't care about at all. I won't always listen to those, but it makes me kind of curious, because a lot of those novelizations are based on early drafts of scripts. And then the scripts sometimes get changed before the movie comes out. Right. And so the books are a lot different sometimes. And I was kind of curious with something like this. Did Macchio, did he have a script to go off of? Or did he actually see an early cut of the movie? Or what was his source material for writing the comic version? Which this is very, very close to the actual final cut of the movie. So
as we were watching the trailer, I was like, well, that's in the comic, that's in the comic, that's in the comic, and that's in the comic. That's a whole other reason kind of why I like the adaptations as well. I kind of want to see, how does it differ? Or is it somebody went and saw the movie and then decided to try and write the comic around it? Let's get into this first issue. I want to read a synopsis. We will go issue by issue since you got some time tonight, and we'll talk about it. So bear with me because I took my notes. Okay. So synopsis wise, the one I did while hanging out with Chris and talking to him wasn't the greatest. So I figured what I would do here is introduce our characters, and then I'll pop back in and do a synopsis for each issue, talk about some of the key moments that happened. Then we'll get back to the podcast we've recorded. So Up first, let's talk about Dr. Peyton Westlake undergoes a transformation from brilliant scientist to vengeful vigilante after a tragic attack leaves him scarred and seeking justice. That's our main character. That's who's going to become Darkman. Then we have his girlfriend, Julie Hastings, a beacon of compassion and strength. She finds herself entangled in a dangerous web of corporate corruption as she uncovers damning evidence against powerful individuals. Then you have the enigmatic Louis Strack Jr., initially presented as a wealthy businessman, but reveals a darker side as the true mastermind behind the criminal activities. And looming over them all is the ruthless crime boss Robert G. Durant, whose sadistic nature and thirst for power drive the story's central conflicts. So those are your 4 main characters that you're going to get in this book. So in issue 1, we watch as Dr. Peyton Westlake's world is shattered when a brutal attack leaves him scarred and presumed dead. As he grapples with his new identity as Darkman, a vigilante fueled by vengeance, he sets his sights on the ruthless crime boss, Robert G. Durant. So in our first issue, we get our introduction to Dr. Peyton Westlake. He's a brilliant scientist. He's working on some synthetic skin for the medical industry. However, there's a bit of a problem as the cellular breakdown of this skin that is created happens at 99 minutes on the dot. Peyton also proposes, or at least attempts to propose, to his girlfriend, Julie Hastings, trying to move their relationship a bit forward. However, she says she's trying to consider her career and needs some time to think about it. Back at the lab, there's an attack on Dr. Westlake by Durant and his men in search of something called the Belisarius Memorandum, which is a document that Julie had found. This is the damning evidence that was mentioned earlier that she had found while investigating her employer. In the attack, they destroy the lab, scar Peyton's face, and leave him for dead. Peyton is presumed dead after the attack with only a piece of his ear left behind, and this event sets the stage for his transformation into Darkman. Peyton ends up in a hospital, burnt all over his body, but he has survived the attack, and he escapes the hospital, driven by rage and a desire for revenge against Durant and his men. Peyton also discovers that due to the medical treatment he received, he can no longer feel physical pain, and this sets the stage for his evolution into Darkman. And we get a vow for revenge. With his face scarred and his life shattered, Peyton vows to find Durant and his men and make them pay for what they've done. So that is issue 1 in a nutshell. The fact that the accident, well, it's called an accident. It's not an accident. When Durant shows up, he intentionally blows the lab up, which sends Peyton flying into the air, into the river or the body of water, wherever they're at. And Julie thinks he's dead, but he's still alive. Apparently somebody finds him. The next thing you see him in the hospital, he's bandaged up, and you get an explanation for kind of what happens to him. That's pretty important because he does go through a change because he's burned so badly. The doctors, the medical staff, specifically the surgeons and doctors made a decision to sever some kind of a nerve that sends the impulses of pain to the brain. But because of this, because of the absence of pain, his brain actually overcompensates or does it goes through some kind of I don't know what the withdrawal, I guess is probably the best word. Because there's no pain now, the brain starts to try and overcompensate for the absence of that, and by doing that he gets these adrenaline spikes and he's subject to rages. Go ahead.
This scene is in the movie, and to be honest, there were parts of the movie that I was just kind of halfway paying attention, so I may have missed them saying this in the movie. But on this last watch, I don't remember them mentioning the effects. I remember them sticking him with a needle and saying he can't feel it. I don't remember the part about that driving him into these uncontrollable rages, which it makes sense because he has those in the movie. But in the movie, it seems more like an after effect of the trauma of the accident and the situation he's in where he can't be with the woman he loves and all this stuff. And he thinks of himself as a freak after his face has been blown off.
And it does come into play every once in a while in the book too, but it's a way of kind of explaining some some super strength, I guess you would say. It's not really super strength, but he definitely I almost want to say it's a way of giving him superpowers.
Yeah. Well, he definitely he doesn't feel pain, so he's able to withstand punishment more than most people.
Right. But yes, yeah, he's also got the fits of rage too there. But yeah, this first issue sets up the tragedy. We get our characters here. We get Peyton, we get Julie, we get Louis Strack Jr., and we get Durant, which I think Durant is one of the main antagonists through the film. I would assume the way this book, if it follows the film like it did, I don't remember Strack at all. I remember Durant most likely, just because he's an actor I recognize. But go ahead. Yeah,
Durant is the more memorable villain in the movie, and Strack or whatever his name is, he's sort of like the Lex Luthor, whereas Durant is more of the heavy and the muscle that is more of the physical, and he's the one who causes Darkman's origin and everything too. So you don't really get to the confrontation with Strack. Doesn't do a whole lot until the end of the movie, really.
Right. There's a lot of conversation also about this thing called the Belisarius Memorandum, which apparently is evidence that Durant will kill for in order to. It's a real estate deal. He's trying to get. Strack plays it as Durant wants some of this real estate, and this memorandum that Julie had found is supposedly evidence that Durant could use against Strack and get this overturn or take over this bid for this waterfront property. That's the way Strack spins it here. But yeah, that Julie's going to get involved here in a few because of this whole Belisarius memorandum. In this first issue, we kind of learn that she's part of a law team that works with Strack, and then she starts looking at the books and realizes, hey, something ain't right here. Your dad was paying off some people for, what were they, the zoning commission or something?
Yeah, some kind of bribes and payoffs and stuff, and she wasn't supposed to see that. And so they try and get the memo back, and that's when they go. They know that it's at his lab. Yeah,
Peyton has no idea, right? Like
he doesn't even know what they're talking about. Yeah,
they just show up and start wrecking stuff, and he don't know what. He has no idea what they're there for. They find what they're looking for and walk out with it. And by that time, he's already got half his face burn off, and the bird's about to make which what an interesting way to detonate.
Yeah. A lot of this stuff, it just works better in a movie than it does in a comic. They squeeze almost everything from the movie into these 3 issues, but the result is a lot of really rushed, clipped scenes, just kind of moving from one thing to the next to try and get it all in, it seems like. And maybe that's just me being harsh because I watched the movie right before I read these, and I just think it works better in a movie. I've said before, I rarely think a comic based on something from another medium. I usually don't think it works very well. There are exceptions.
Right. Did Strack Sr. get shot in the movie?
No, I don't think that's in the movie at all. It may have been in the script or in an early cut of the movie or something, but I don't think his dad is alive at all, or maybe not even mentioned in the movie. Maybe it's all just Strack Jr.
It's interesting. I'm sitting here thinking, okay, they kind of throw this, as I'm making my notes, one of the things that I'm always trying to do is, okay, I need to make sure I get a good flow here of my notes. So when they start jumping, okay, we got a page for Strack Jr., and then we got a page for Peyton, now we're at Julie. It's tough for me to be, okay, I need to keep this. When I note this, I need to kind of keep it with the rest of whatever's going to happen next for this character, because we're going to jump from scene to scene. So anyway, the point is that Strack Senior's getting shot was out of the blue, and I'm like, what is going on? Yeah. And now that I think about it, it's like, you don't need that in this comic.
Right.
The only thing that really you need it for is to make Junior seem like a more sympathetic character. And I wonder if that's why, because oh man, his dad got shot. Oh, he has no idea what's going on with this memorandum. That's the only thing that I could think of as to why they even put that in there. But it definitely, I don't think it needed it. But I bet you're right. It's one of those things where that might have been in the script, might have been a deleted scene. You never know. I don't know. But anyway, you got any other notes here for this first issue?
Just for one thing, the cover.
Oh, yeah.
I'm fairly sure that's Brett Blevins. I don't see a credit for him or a signature on the front, but that looks like a Brett Blevins image to me, who was the Sleepwalker artist. I'm looking at the second and third issue covers, and they also don't have a signature. It looks like maybe, I kind of wonder if that's a Walt Simonson cover on number 2. And I do see Heritage Auction has Bob Hall and Al Williamson, Darkman number 3 cover original art. So I guess that's the artist of issue 3.
The cover?
Bob Hall, who's the series artist.
All right. Well, let's pick a panel. I'm going to pick, I don't know why this stood out to me. There's some pretty cool stuff in here. The explosion of the lab is probably one of the more dynamic ones on there, but I'm going to go 2 panels after that, and I'm just going to be stupid and do the Darkman silhouette in flames, launch falling into the river or the sea or whatever that is.
Good.
That's what I'm taking.
I'm gonna be cheap, and I'm gonna go with second to last page, which is a full page of Darkman's face, and he's seeing his girlfriend, or they're not engaged yet. And it's just sort of a full page, almost hallucination type thing, where he's clearly in a bad state of mind, and he's seeing his girlfriend and some equations there. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, man, this is a wild page, really, when you look at it. There is, all 3 of them ladies are Julie, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. She's naked in all 3 of them with the smoke. I guess I don't know where the smoke's coming from. Oh, no, that's his bandages. That's his bandages that are covering her. And the equation's like, what the heck, dude?
I guess that's him thinking about his work. But
it's the early meme of that lady that's thinking of things.
That's what I'll go with.
That's a good pick, man. I think that's a really good pick. This stuff towards the end is really cool. I do want to it's really neat to kind of see back in 1990 what we thought was cutting edge technology. It doesn't do much, but other than just remind me of how old I am. But we see in this first issue where they take a photograph and put it into a computer, and it digitizes this and that. Well, there is some applications now where they create, 3D printing. Mm-hmm. They will 3D print limbs and things for people now, which is really cool. And this is kind of one of those, you see that and you're like, oh, that's a precursor to what's actually going to be happening in real life here pretty soon. Kind of cutting edge stuff. I think really the only other thing that I had mentioned earlier, the whole setting up the little, what are those things called? The little birds.
The bird thing?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I clearly
remember.
A metronome. It's sort of like that though. Right. It goes back and forth, but the ones I remember seeing used to have, they would put water in front of
Homer
the bird.
Used one in the episode where he gained all the weight and he was working from home.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's a Simpsons episode.
I know it's got to be a Simpsons thing, but I don't know that reference for sure. What happened?
Well, he gained a bunch of weight so he could get on disability, and so they set him up with a computer to do his job from home. And all he was doing is hitting the Y on his computer because it would say vent gas, yes or no, and he would put yes for yes, vent the gas. And he figured out that that's all he had to do. So he set up one of those birds. He would just hit the Y button every second. So he just didn't have to sit at his computer anymore.
That's funny. Well, anyway, the bird that is something that's from the movie too. I remember that, right? Yeah. That's in the movie, and was that like Durant's calling card or something? Or?
That's really the only, his calling card really was him snapping fingers off with his.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. The bird thing, I think that was something that the 2 scientists already had in their lab, and he just used it.
Oh, he used it. Okay.
I guess it was a timer thing, so he could leave, and it would blow up a few minutes later whenever it actually hit the lighter.
Well, let's get into issue 2. Now for issue 2. Darkman's quest for revenge intensifies as he confronts Durant's men while struggling with the limitations of his synthetic skin. Meanwhile, Julie Hastings finds herself drawn into a dangerous game of deception orchestrated by Louis Strack Jr. So in this issue, Darkman finds a pill bottle belonging to one of Durant's men, Rick Anderson, which leads him to Rick's house. So Darkman's trying to find some clues as to who attacked him. Peyton heads to another lab to create a synthetic face for himself using some advanced technology, showcasing his resourcefulness and determination. So Darkman assumes the identity of one of Durant's men in order to learn more about some of the dealings that Durant is doing and he learns about some money, I think, that's going to exchange hands, and Durant has to be there. So Peyton ends up framing Durant by creating a mask and wearing it in full view and robs a convenience store. Durant ends up getting arrested, allowing Peyton to wear Durant's mask and go make this exchange and steal. I think his plan is to steal the money from whoever they were supposed to meet. However, that kind of falls apart when Durant gets out of jail and they run into each other at the meet. Durant is looking at himself walking out of this building. Peyton also has an emotional reunion with Julie where he tries to explain the truth about a survival and transformation into Darkman. But despite their bond, Darkman's synthetic skin starts to deteriorate, and he runs off, leaving Julie once again. He does. Okay, so issue 2, Peyton's trying to track down who did this to him. Clearly, he's upset because he's now scarred for life. He's a monster. I think at one point he describes himself as a monster in this book. Yeah. He's taking some steps to try and get back with Julie, who thinks he's dead. But yeah, he tracks down Durant, and he starts kind of infiltrating Durant's men by using their faces. He creates a skin mask and wears it and becomes that person. And he sets up, I think this is the moment where he sets up Durant, and Peyton has Durant's face on, goes and robs a convenience store or something, and looks right at the camera, framing Durant for a crime. And then he takes the place of Durant, who gets arrested. He takes the place of Durant at some kind of a meet in order to try and steal some money, I think is what he's trying to do. He's trying to steal $2 million. And then on the way out, as his face is dripping off, getting ready to drip off of him, Durant had been released from the police, and he was walking into the same building as Peyton was walking out. So they both look at each other, and Durant's like, what the hell is going on here? And then Peyton takes off and tries to run away. And I think at the end of this, Durant's tailing him, but loses him, but finds the mask laying on the ground. And he's okay. I want to find this guy and I want to make him pay. So yeah, Durant, and there's going to be a big confrontation at some point here. As far as Julie goes, Julie starts to become a little close to Lewis Jr. or Stratton Jr.
He's clearly got a thing for her, and also trying to comfort her because she's lost her man. Right. And the thing is that Peyton's watching this happen. So I'm sure that is not helping his emotional stability in any way. But he also does approach Julie at his own grave and tries to say, hey, look, I'm still alive. I suffered from this explosion, but he's got that. Is it the Phantom of the Opera? Would you compare it to that? He comes up to her and then all of a sudden, oh, don't look at me. And then he takes off running. I don't know if that's. Yeah. He's got the synthetic skin that he uses to make the masks and stuff. It lasts only, I think, 99 minutes.
Yeah, 99 minutes.
And at least when it's exposed to light. If it was
exactly
in the dark, it would last longer. But yeah, he knows he can only be around her for an hour and a half at a time, or else his face is going to melt off, and he doesn't want her to know what he looks like underneath. So
yeah,
he does manage to meet up with her and start trying to rekindle things, but he always has to run off after a short amount of time to get back before his face melts away.
Yeah, and she's like, "Where are you going? Stay with me. Why are you running away?" And yeah, he's very, very much horrified at what her reaction would, thinking of just what her reaction would be if she saw what he looks like in reality, which it's not pretty. It's definitely not pretty. I can't remember what he looked like with the bandages off in the movie. Is it as horrific as it is in the comic?
It's pretty close. In the movie, the only thing that retained the majority of the flesh was that left eye and forehead area. The rest was all charred, and he doesn't have any lips. It's just teeth. Yeah, it's pretty gnarly.
Okay.
The main difference, anyway, from the movie in this is Rick, which in the movie is played by Ted Raimi, Sam Raimi's younger brother, who is always fun. And it's one of the most memorable parts of the movie because the way we don't see Rick's fate in the series until the third issue, but in the movie, he pretty much kills him right away. He kidnaps him, and then he shoves his from the waist up, shoves him up through a manhole in the street, and there are cars flying by. Yeah, it's pretty. It's one of the more entertaining parts of the movie, really. And then you see the headlights coming right at his head, and then it cuts. But whereas in this one, we find out in the third issue what happens to him. He's just kind of missing for the rest of this issue. But but yeah, pretty much everything else is the same as the book here. It's all really rushed. It seems like, it may just be me because I just watched the movie and it flows better that way. The angle of not just the hideously disfigured scientist that's seeking vengeance, but it's a cool angle that this is a guy who was working on this synthetic skin, and even though it's not perfected, he can still use it in clever ways to get back at these guys. And he sets up the one guy and makes it look like he's trying to get away with the money, which Durant kills him for. And then he also has the big thing with Durant, disguising himself as Durant to pick up money from one of the underworld guys. So that's a cool angle that I think is neat about the Darkman character.
Right. Yeah. And Durant, what a psycho.
Yeah.
He has, okay, it's bad enough. You're like, okay, any run-in you have with Durant, he's going to chop a finger off.
At the least. But the man collects them and puts them in numbered boxes at his home. Was that in the movie? Definitely him taking the fingers. I don't remember specifically about him having the collection. I think that is in the movie too, though. All
right. Well, yeah. You can see him sitting there talking on the phone, and he's delicately putting a finger in I almost want to call them finger coffins, dude.
Yeah, that's what they look like. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Like, I hope you're doing something to keep them preserved, and they're guys are rotting away in there. That's probably
nasty. Nasty. I guess we'll pick a panel here. I'm taking finger coffins.
Okay, I'm going to go with, I don't know what page it is, but it's Rageful Darkman, where he's got the pipe, and I guess he's pulling a piece of this pipe off of a longer pipe, and he wrenches it off, and then he starts hitting stuff with it. But I'll take that first panel. It's like a full-length vertical panel where he's pulling the pipe off.
Frightening. He don't have lips, dude.
Yeah, that's the rage coming through.
Oh, man.
And also, I guess we can mention, in each one of these issues opens with the first page with like a recap page, at least for the.
That's the way I took it.
Let me see if the first issue just has what is like a Two-Face thing, where on one side you see Peyton, the normal Doctor, on the other side you see the Darkman face. Mm-hmm. But in the second and third issues, it's kind of a recap page, and it's a more detailed. It looks like Teixeira did the inking on this, at least on issue 2 of this recap page, that is pretty cool and more detailed than the rest of the issue. I guess the ink, I don't know if you mentioned it, the inker on the second and third issues is Tony.
Oh, yeah.
Does I don't know.
Zuniga. Yeah, I think that's what I'd go with. Yeah, I didn't. I started talking about Mark Teixeira. I got completely sidetracked about how it was a big difference. But yeah, Tony.
It's not, the art in the second and third issues aren't bad. They're just not as strong, I don't think, as Teixeira's inks in the first issue.
Yeah, I will agree. So yeah, that was a good pick on the panel there. I did like how Darkman decided to hide under the bed.
Yeah.
And then this guy gets up. He goes to the guy's house and waits till he falls asleep, and then when he wakes up, he grabs his legs. Scary stuff. All right, let's get into issue 3 here. In issue 3, Darkman's final showdown with Durant and Louis Strack Jr. culminates in a gripping battle atop high-rise beams. As the dust settles, Darkman embraces his new identity and sets out on a journey to protect the innocent and fight crime. So here's the breakdown for issue 3. We open the issue at the fairground, where if you've watched the movie, you will remember the scene. Peyton's rage kind of takes over at one point, and then his skin begins to melt, and he's running away again from Julie. But this time, Julie follows Peyton to his hideout, where she discovers the various masks he's been using, but despite her shock, she expresses her unwavering support and love for him. The next day, she goes and talks to Louis Jr. and explains that Peyton is still alive. And Julie knows now that Louis was behind all this. Louis lets her go, but calls Durant and tells him to follow her because he knows she will immediately go to where Peyton is at. So as Durant's men follow Julie, they infiltrate the lab. However, Darkman's ready, and he ambushes Durant's men inside the lab. There's a big showdown, and Darkman ends up detonating the lab, emerging victorious there. Across from the building sits Durant in a helicopter. As he watches the lab explode, Darkman attempts to attack Durant. Durant kicks him out of the helicopter. The helicopter begins to take off. However, Darkman grabs the ladder hanging from the bottom of the helicopter. And as Durant attempts to fly through the city, Darkman is clinging as best as he can onto this ladder until finally he lands on top of a semi-truck, ties the ladder down, and as the semi enters under a bridge, it pulls the helicopter into the bridge, destroying it with a massive explosion. Then we get our final showdown between Darkman and Lewis Jr., who has captured Julie and has taken her to the top of some type of undeveloped building where the two start to fight. Darkman rescues Julie from Lewis Jr., donning Durant's mask one last time to deceive the villain and ensure Julie's safety by sending Lewis Jr. off of the building to his demise. And at the end of the book, as Julie professes her love for Peyton, he acknowledges his transformation into Darkman and decides to leave her behind, embracing his new identity as he sets off on a mission to fight crime. Lewis ends up getting the upper hand by riveting Peyton's hand to some steel. And it's a rivet gun that gets shot and puts a rivet into the steel.
His hand there, yeah.
Pinning his hand there. Lewis decides to insult his looks, calling him a freak, and starts
couldn't just be happy with the win. You had to try and dig into it a little more.
He did. He started talking about Julie, and boy, did that make Darkman mad. He is enraged. He pulls himself free, picks Lewis up. At first, he had him by the throat, and then he just decided, what is this, Darth Vader Emperor stuff? Where he has him and throws him completely off the building, impaling him on some rebar. He doesn't just go splat. He gets impaled, it looks like. So as Julie finds Peyton, in the aftermath of this, she asks him, stay with me. But even as she's pleading, Peyton turns around and he says, Peyton's dead. And then he leaves. And then the next scene is you see Peyton in an alley scaring some of the locals. It's not like these guys were doing anything bad either. It was just funny. They're just hanging around trying to warm themselves around a fire. And he's like, what does he say? I need to find the end of this issue real quick. Cause he just walks up on him. He's like, you guys better run.
Yeah. It's just like, hey, I'm going to scare these homeless men to death. So. That's how it seems.
Right. He goes, okay, yeah. So these guys are all hanging around and they're like, they're just trying to warm their hands. And one of them says, nothing ever happens, man. It's all the same every day. And the other guy's like, got that right. And then Peyton shows up not wearing a mask. And he says, well, things are about to get different. So if you know what's good for you, run for your life. Why? Why do this to these guys? Does this happen in the movie?
No.
Okay.
The end of the movie is the classic Bruce Campbell cameo where he is the mask. That's the mask he's sort of wearing at the end. And
that's right.
This ending is more he leaves Julie behind, and now he's gone completely insane.
Yeah.
Whereas the movie ends with him more like he's going to be a superhero defending the downtrodden rather than scaring the life out of them.
Right. Yeah, I thought, well, yeah, okay, he's going to fight some crime or something here. And no, he just rolls up on these guys that are hanging out and states you guys better run. So yeah, it is kind of a dark ending.
Yeah.
For this book where he's just he completely gone nuts and he's going to, that's the way it's going to be. So there you go. We get resolution to our story. You get to see the big fight between Durant and Darkman, which is pretty cool. Mainly, he doesn't even get his hands on Actually, he does. He gets his hands on Durant for a quick second. Durant kicks him off the helicopter. He grabs the ladder and he goes for a ride. And then he's able to kill Durant by crashing the helicopter, which is pretty cool. But
yeah, the helicopter thing in the movie is the big action set piece, and it goes on for several minutes. In the book, it's just a couple pages.
Right.
It's more elaborate in the movie, which you would think in a comic book they could be more elaborate than the movie, given there's no budgetary restraints. But they also have to do it in a timely fashion in the comic as well. So
yeah. This could have been 4 issues.
Yeah, I do kind of wonder if maybe that would have been better and it could have breathed more with 4 or maybe even more issues. And I get a little annoyed at the so-called decompressed style of a lot of modern comics that take too much time to set things up and pay them off, in my opinion, whereas older comics are more to the point and can be more fun that way, I think. But I think this one could have used some more. This story could have used more than 3 issues to really get a better. Everything just seems a lot more rushed than it needs to be.
Right. Yeah, I think where it's probably lacking the most, if you want to pay it off like this, where he becomes disfigured Joker or whatever, work your way to that. There were some flashes of that, but it's not. A lot of it is just him being, oh, don't look at me. Oh, I am disfigured. I am horrible. So please don't look at me. But the scene in the movie of the carnival, versus what happens here. What happens in this book is way tamer, in my opinion, than what happens in the movie.
The carnival scene is kind of the best part of the movie, really. It's not an action scene or anything. It's just him having this massive overreaction to this conflict with it doesn't want to give him the elephant, and it doesn't play it's similar, I guess, in that he attacks the guy, but there's no way to replicate what happens in the movie in a comic, really.
No, you cannot. Imagine if you didn't watch the movie and you watch this, you read this carnival scene as it goes down, you're not going to get the same Liam Neeson delivery in your head. Of what
and you're not going to get it before even the fucking elephant. There's when he snaps, there's this extreme zoom in into Liam Neeson's left eye, and then there's all these explosions, and then it zooms back out his other eye, and that's when he goes completely crazy and breaks the guy's fingers and stuff. There's just, you can't really replicate it in a comic, which is one of the reasons I don't think comics are normally as good when they're adapting another medium. But and another thing, it just doesn't flow very well. It's they've got all the scenes that they want to make sure they get into the comic, but they've got to condense them into 5 or 6 panels, and then we got to move to the next scene and make sure we get it all in. It just doesn't seem to really flow as well as it could if they had a little more time to let everything breathe.
There's got to be something that that allows that transition in a movie to happen so well.
Yeah, I'm sure if you had some artists could approximate it in a different way, kind of give you the same sense of what the movie's going for, but do it in with panels and just standard comic book art.
And a lot of it comes down to, again, it probably comes down to acting. You have Liam Neeson, who is, he can act, and he's acting. He's definitely acting in this movie. He's trying to get across this rage and the struggle that this person is having. And you can see a little bit of that. But again, you get this carnival scene where we do get a close up of his right eye, but it's just him furrowing his brow. We don't have anything like they're able to pull off in the movie. So again, yeah, you're right. It could have been, somebody could have looked at that and said, oh, I got to get this across. Definitely. This is what but then again, they may not have seen the movie either. This book came out and they're just looking at the script. The script may say zoom in on right eye, left eye or whatever. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I could do that. Zoom in. There it is. Oh, there's his left eye. And imagine drawing this, and then you go to the movie and watch what happened. You're like, wait a second.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that. I wasn't thinking that, man. So, all right.
I think I wanted to mention, we do see what happened to Rick here, which is that his confrontation with Darkman left him a stammering mess. He's gone completely insane. And yeah, again, the helicopter scene is the big finale or the big set piece in the movie and kind of in this. And then we have the confrontation on the girders on the incomplete high rise or whatever. And it's a little, that sequence, and maybe I'm just speaking more to the movie even. It's a little underwhelming when you've had the big helicopter explosion sequence. When you have this fight following that, it's not quite as big or bombastic. So, but yeah, as far as the book as a whole, again, it's entertaining enough, and I think Darkman is a cool character. I just don't think that this 3-issue series it's just not as entertaining as what the movie was able to bring out. And I think one of the reasons might be, like you said, that they didn't have maybe they didn't even see the movie. They just had the script to work off of or something. One other thing, you had the masks, beating Tom Cruise to the punch with the Mission Impossible masks.
Oh, yeah.
I think that was part of the old TV show, maybe as well. But one gag that they used in Mission Impossible 2 is straight from this, where in this, he put a mask of himself over one of the bad guys. And so the guy kills his partner and then pulls off the second mask and sees his friend duct taped with his mouth duct taped underneath the second mask. So that's a gag that they kind of repeated, that got used in Mission Impossible 2 10 years after Darkman. But
right.
Not that John Woo was ripping off Darkman, but he may have seen it. Inspired's a word. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got as far as it's worth reading if you're a Darkman fan. It's cool to see, to kind of compare and contrast the movie. Again, it's got almost everything from the movie is in here, and even a few little tidbits that are not in the movie that may have been initially that got cut or something. Who knows? But interestingly, like I said earlier, there was. We'll talk about post Darkman after. I guess we get our final thoughts in our panel and stuff.
I think I've already got pulled up what you're going to talk about too. So I knew it had to be mentioned. Okay, yeah. So as far as panels go, let me take a look here. I think. Did I get to pick first this time?
Go ahead.
All right, because I'm going to. I will go with the final panel. The very final panel. As the homeless men run for their lives, they are scared to death of a cackling Darkman who, I wonder what his plans are. Is he planning on fighting crime? Is he just going to is he hanging out in the alley a la Spawn? Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know, but oh man.
I'm going to go for my panel. I'm going to go with again, I don't have the page count number, but Darkman riding the 18-wheeler after the explosion of the helicopter, screaming at the people he's killed already.
That's a good one. I was kind of torn. I like the rivet scene too, where he gets nailed with the rivets. Which, does one land in his head?
See, I was wondering about that, but it looks you don't see any evidence of that afterwards. So I guess maybe it just kind of went over his head. Maybe. Okay,
bounced off of it or something, or ricocheted or something.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about post 1990 Darkman. What's your notes there?
Yeah, I just was going to say that I don't know. I'd really like to know more details as far as how it happened. After the movie came out, there was I think a 6-issue Darkman miniseries that Marvel put out, and none other than Kurt Busiek was the writer of that series, and I believe Javier Saltares was the artist, if I'm saying his name right. But which is interesting that him and Teixeira both worked on Darkman, and they also both worked on Ghost Rider around the same time. But that's neither here nor there, I guess. But yeah, I've got those Darkman issues. I haven't read them all, but I do want to. I've read, I think, either the first or first 2 issues of that. And it's just kind of the continuing adventures of Darkman. And I am kind of curious, is that something Marvel had planned to do before the movie even came out? Were they obligated? Because the movie was not a big hit. So I don't know if they were just obligated to do it. I don't know if it was the sales were low or what, because it only went 6 issues. Maybe it was only planned to be 6 issues. I don't know the details on all that stuff, but it is cool that they got a young Kurt Busiek to work on it, and a pretty solid artist as well. And then I know Kurt Busiek also wrote the Darkman versus Army of Darkness miniseries that came, I think that came out probably over 10 years ago at this point. I've never read that, but I have seen that the collection's available and stuff, and I've thought about checking that out too, mostly because Busiek was the writer. And then there was also 2 Darkman sequels, movies that were direct-to-video sequels, and Durant lives. He somehow survived the explosion of the helicopter.
Wow.
And he is the villain in the second direct-to-video movie, and Liam Neeson does not return. Darkman in the video straight-to-video movies was portrayed by Arnold Vosloo, the guy who played the Mummy in the Mummy movies, the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies.
Okay. And
I've got those movies. I have not watched them, but eventually I think me and AJ are going to do some small screeners episodes on those sequels, because he's a fan of them, and I'd like to watch them myself. So
awesome. That's freaking cool.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I do want to read the rest of those further Adventures of Darkman style comics that Busiek did in the 90s as well. But
yeah, as you were talking, I was just kind of scanning through the 93 Darkman. So there's, So
it was 93. That was several years later then.
Yeah, this was 93 is where the Busiek Saltares series starts, according to this. And what's interesting is there's this huge page that's kind of recapping what happened and what we just read, right? The movie. And then right at the end of the recap, Julie's like, don't go, stay with me. And Peyton goes, Peyton is gone. Call me Darkman. So the next page is a full page splash of him screaming no and then going, you can't be dead, Durant. You can't be. You must still be alive. If you were dead, I'd feel better. I'm going to find you, Durant, wherever you're hiding. I'm going to find you. Now, Darkman 2 releases on video in 95. So I don't know if this...
Maybe it's abridged.
Yeah, I'm curious if Darkman 2 was based off of this in any way, off of this 6-issue series, which, again, they have learned their lesson that we got to let this breathe a little bit. Now we actually get a story that's not kind of constrained by having to be, here's the movie, write the book.
Yeah.
Now it's more like, hey, okay, here's the character, have fun, which is pretty cool.
I wish I could comment more on what the book is like, because I do have those issues and I've read one or two of them, but it's been about maybe a year or two since I read those and I haven't finished the series, so I'm probably going to go back and start over when I get to them again. But
Darkman versus the Army of Darkness. Now, what's interesting about this, I'm just kind of looking at what I'm seeing here. Apparently there was an alternative cover with Bruce Campbell's face, but it's from Army of Darkness though. But again, there's that the other cover that I'm looking at here, which I assume is the regular cover, is Darkman lying in pain on top of a ton of Bruce Campbell masks. And one of them is actually Ash down there. He's got his eye open. The rest of them are all masks. It's pretty funny, but Ash is laying underneath all these masks as well. But I'm right there with you. I'm kind of curious as to how they portray this character, because is he going to be this crazy madman vigilante? Is that's kind of the only idea I have for this character, is like this crazy guy who's kind of going to use these disguises to get one over on these criminals. The fits of rage and adrenaline boosts and all that stuff make him definitely an interesting character. So
yeah,
but
not to commit you to anything, but whenever me and AJ decide on doing those sequels, if you want, we could do an Unspoken epics on those Darkman issues.
I like that.
Then you can jump on small screeners with us and do the sequels if you want.
See, that's a great idea right there. Put me down when you guys figure out what you're doing there on the timetable. Let me know, and we'll record. All right, man. Well, I think that brings our discussion on Darkman to an end here. Thanks to everybody out there that voted on the polls and got us into this. It was a good discussion, and I really wish I had a chance to watch the movie. It doesn't mean I can't do it tomorrow. I just might. So, but the next, I definitely have to watch it, and then if I'm going to be involved in the films upcoming on the discussion on small screeners. So, anyway, let's get into plugs, man. What do you got going on over in your neck of the woods there?
Well, yeah, you can catch me on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, I guess that's it. At BrodyMan34 is my handle on all those. I'm also have a Letterboxd account, which is Disco Shrew, where I'm keeping track of my movies. And then I've also got another podcast I do with my buddy AJ called Small Screeners, where we look at direct-to-video and made-for-TV movies. And we also do special episodes occasionally, like our most recent one where we look at our favorite movies of 2023. So yeah, that's our most recent episode is the best of 2023. And then maybe by the time this gets put out, we'll have our episode on The Night Flyer. That one's going to be out soon, based on the Stephen King direct to HBO movie from the late 90s. So that's Small Screeners. You can find that on any pod catcher of your choice.
As for myself, ladies and gentlemen, you can go check out the Source Material Comics feed for any podcatcher out there, which you're probably listening to this right now, which is great, and we appreciate that. But on the Source Material Comics feed, you can hear these episodes right here, Unspoken Issues, where we talk 90s comics in affiliation with the Unspoken Decade, that great Facebook site and website for all your 90s comics, blogs, and podcasts. Check that out here. Recently, I think Dean and Emily got together and talked a Marvel Valentine special from 1997, and that's out there. And then the Source Material Comics podcast, me and Mark Radlich got together. We're still in the middle of doing a Batman trilogy. I think recently we discussed Batman GCPD, which was pretty good. The trade is called Gordon of Gotham, which has 3 stories in it, and they're all about either Jim Gordon himself or the people that surround Batman as supporting characters, and all 3 of them are pretty good, so we're about in the middle of that, so check that out. But with that being said, we are getting out of here. That over there is Chris Armstrong. I'm Jesse Starcher. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you soon. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. Unspoken Issues is part of the UnspokenDecade.com, the home for 90s comics, blogs, and podcasts. Unspoken Issues also has a Facebook group you can join if you are interested. Just search the Unspoken Issues podcast and request to join. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.